What do I think of Marvel Rivals? Marvel Rivals is currently looking to be the next big multiplayer game. They have the mandate of players and excitement right now. They've got the momentum. And so the question is can they keep it going, right? It's a question similar to Supervive, where it's like, okay, the game's sweet, but is it sweet after you play it for 50 or 100 hours? That's important to think about. And the question as well is, can they maintain it as a live game? So, as an example, Overwatch years ago was in the same position as Marvel Rivals. It came out, incredible game, incredible art, and Blizzard wasn't really able to maintain Overwatch over the long term in terms of, you know, its balance and adjustments and things like that. And so Overwatch eventually fell off, right? Still a great game, of course, but, you know, in terms of how the game was upkept over the long term, you know, it eventually just didn't feel as great. And so I think that's the question, going to be the question for Marvel Rivals is, are they going to be able to like have a game upkeep and release cadence and balance strategy and things like that keep the game like high quality and engaging over the long term? I think that's something they're going to have to think about. But right now, I think Marvel Rivals is in an exciting position where they're doing really well, they're popping off, and so it's really just how they run with it, you know? They have all the chances, they have like a big chance to make something that's really, really good and really big for the long term. And so it's really just how they handle it. What do I think Overwatch's biggest problem is? I mean, I don't know what its biggest problem is now, because I haven't played it in a long time. But my perception, and this is just my opinion, just one guy, I don't work on Overwatch. I don't have any insight into how they work, right? So, you know, who knows if this is even correct. But my feeling with Overwatch, watching that game, as someone who really liked it when it came out, is it felt like Blizzard wasn't very effective at fixing problems with the game in a timely manner and in the correct manner. And so it often felt like when things got bad in Overwatch, it would be a while before those bad things were fixed. And when they were fixed, it wouldn't necessarily mean A, that they were even fixed, or B, if they were fixed, that the game got better, right? As an example, again, personal opinion, doesn't mean I'm right, is like they had the GOATS meta. And the solution to the GOATS meta was role select. Which is like, oh, well, if no one's going to play a DPS, what if we, you know, force them to play a DPS? And that was an effective solution, but I'm not sure that it ended up making the game better in the long run versus, you know, keeping the roles more open and then finding like more effective ways to say nerf Brigitte and tanks and buff DPS so that, you know, those things wouldn't happen as much. Now, again, that said, though, I mean, balancing a game is really, really, really hard, right? And I am not a dev on Overwatch, and so I don't know all the difficulties and challenges that they face. And so maybe role select was like the perfect solution to deal with GOATs. It's kind of a thing where it often felt like Overwatch's live upkeep on the game wasn't as expedient or as effective as it potentially could have been. The other thing I would say about Overwatch is Overwatch could feel very samey. And what I mean by samey is you can only group up as 6 people, walk to the point, everybody ult, and then one person wins the team fight so many times before the game started feeling similar. And so I always wondered when I was playing Overwatch if there would be like effective ways to like inject more individual performance into the game, because it felt like by the time I started churning from it, which to be fair was around the GOATS meta, so it was a very, very long time ago, but it often felt like games played out incredibly similarly between games, which is basically just like, what does my team do? Don't try to fight 1v1, don't try to interact with the enemy team, just sit back, be completely safe, charge all our ults, and then all 6 of us group on the point and use our ults versus the enemy team all using their ults, and then one team wins, and then do that repeatedly until the match ends. And so I always felt like I wondered if there was ways that Overwatch could have had like more individual plays and picks matter, such that it was like less team fight ult spammy. Again, though, that was just my perception of it as like one player who played it. And so it's kind of a thing where it's like, for me, the game ended up getting old after a couple hundred hours because I was like, well, I've seen this. I've played this. I've played Teamfight Sim. And yes, there might be different characters in this game, but we're going to be doing a very similar thing each time. And so eventually, for me, it got old and I kind of churned from it. Does Valorant do this better? I'm not going to use Valorant as an example, but actually I'll use CSGO, which Valorant is like. I think the Demolition game mode, which originated in CSGO and then is also in Valorant. For those of you who don't know what Demolition is, Demolition is 5v5, permadeath. If you die, you die. Round structure, you know, try to win 15 rounds or whatever. And one team tries to plant the bomb and one team tries to stop them from planting or defuse it, right? And I think that setup creates extreme variance in how games play out. And that's huge. And so Counter-Strike, I think, legitimately, and games like Counter-Strike, are legitimately 1,000-hour plus games because of that game mode, because of how that game mode plays out. And there's a lot of reasons that works like that. The permadeath really helps. The fact that the game is so lethal really helps. Like the fact that like when you're in a game of Valorant or Counter-Strike and you're like 1v5, technically you could win. Like if you're 1v5 in Valorant, you technically can still win. Obviously that's unlikely to happen, but if you just instantly one-tap all other 5 enemy team members, like you could win the game, right? And so there's a lot of like carry potential, there's a lot of comeback potential, there's a lot of like crazy clutch moments that you don't expect. And so I think games like CSGO, just because of their like baseline system of how the competitive game plays, tend to have like a lot of variance that makes it easy to play the game for 1,000 hours and not feel like you're seeing the same thing every time. What do I think of Fortnite? I think Fortnite has that with the Battle Royale, right? Like, Battle Royales, like Fortnite and PUBG, in first person specifically, or third person, tend to get a lot of variance just from like, oh, I'm hiding in a house. What does that mean? I'm hiding in a field. What does that mean? This player is really, really good in trying to kill me. This player doesn't actually want to win. They just want to brawl, right? Like there's a lot of variance that comes from the Battle Royale formula when it's a shooter, at least.